First of all, let's start with comparing the innate and adaptive immune system. If you remember, like in last week, in our immunity or immune system, we have two types. One is the adaptive, one is the innate. Innate immune system is basically what we know as, like something happened very immediate. It happens to, and they're known to be a very non-specific. So let's think about like what are the examples of the innate immune system. There are 4 components of the innate immune system. You can copy this one down at the same time too. One of the components for the innate immune system is obviously the physical and the chemical barrier. We all did that last week. So physical as in like, you can think about skin is a good example of the physical barrier too. Mucous membrane is another one that too. And something like acidic environment. All kind of examples too. Tears, teardrops also be like some forms of the physical as well as the chemical barriers too. Enzyme activity as well too. A lot of times, if you had an invasion through that, this kind of physical chemical barriers, we also name that as the first line of the defense. Basically, your skin is the first line of defense, so it's kind of protecting you from all that surrounding germs. But sometimes you get a cut and something happens, especially through your mouth, nose, eyes, ears. So into that, if they invade through your bodies too, they are using those components called the cellular components. Cellular components, as we watched the video here, basically the phagocyte. Those one that eat all that can add some germs or debris too. Neutrophils. Please revise the difference between these neutrophils and the macrophages. I went through the details about those differences between the two, but the video described the macrophages are really like a line of sight, eating all that too, and neutrophils basically something that kills the bacteria, like a suicide bombers too. Yeah, that's a good way to understand, but it's more about like macrophages coming out from the mast cell and neutrophils coming from the bone marrows too. So I have provided details about these two. So if you're not too sure, watch the video last week too. There will also be natural killer cell, NK cells as well too, which is killing the infected cells. Okay, this is the second component of the innate immune systems. The third, which also you really need to study for that, is the inflammatory like a response. The common signs of the inflammatory is basically you get the heat, redness, swelling in the regions of that due to the vasodilation. The meaning of the vasodilation is that they're dilating, they enlarge the blood vessels near the infectious site too. So a lot of they get more supply of the cellular components, giving us the environment to kind of washing out those pathogens as well too. The redness is kind of telling you that you have a sickness, you have some invasions, kind of red a lot to that too. And you also feel the sensation of the heat that making to be like, basically can imagine that infectious site is your battlefield. The fourth component is, I'm going to really go through too much details about it, but it's also known one of these, complement system. This system is basically composed of the groups of the proteins themselves. Okay, that's kind of making the proteins themselves are also killing the pathogens. The last one is the term called the interferons. Interferons. So spelling is, I give it a interferons. Now, this is not really for the bacterial infections. It's more about viral infections too. So it is inhibiting as in like kind of stopping the viral replication. It's a type of protein as well too. So if you remember how the viruses can spread apart too, they injected these nucleic acid into the cells. They're kind of stopping it using the interference too. Slightly different term, but all of those are known to be an innate immune system, as in like they are very immediately happen after they can always be happen to. And they are not really specific. So if you get an invasion of the virus, they actually get to activate the same things too. Okay, even for the fungi reactions. So in terms of memory, would there be a memory of that? There'll be no memory of that innate immune system because there's simply a they're same the response in every single times too. Okay, the cells involved for that, I kind of give you some summary of that too. So cells like a phagocyte, including the macrophages, neutrophils, NK cells. It's good examples too. Dendritic cell. If you remember the videos too, those one that eat like a phagocytism too, but putting the debris on the top for the antigens too. That's the dendritic cells with the, like many legs. You can imagine that too. Now, response to pathogens, there are basically the same response every single time. There'll be no special like a phagocytism, but there's no special like a dendritic cell will be formed. Examples of that, as I gave the other example over here, these are the example of the innate immune system basically too. Okay, every single component here is innate immune systems. All good? Okay, talk a little more about then in here, adaptive immune system. Adaptive immune system is pretty delayed compared to the innate immune systems. It takes about the days to get activated time to times. But they are highly specific. Okay, and they also has the memory of the cells, and they'll also be very fast and stronger upon the re-exposure. Cells involved, it's good to know the leukocyte, or known as the B cells, and the T cells. Those two are the many, the typical like cells involved. The two response to the pathogen, they are basically very customized response for each pathogen. So let's talk a little more about the adaptive immune systems then. Okay, we did that last week, but happy to just go through that again. Hayden, what are the two types of the adaptive immune systems? Two types. Were you here last week? Oh, all of you were not here. Irony. Those of you who were here last week is not here today. Good. Good to know. Write it down, please. There are two types of the adaptive immune system. One is called the antibody mediated immunity. The second is that cell mediated immunity. So what does it mean by the antibody mediated immunities too? Okay, this is also known as the humoral immunity as well too, in terms of the common name of the immunity system. So as we can get the name from this kind of immunity, antibody. Antibody basically are released from the B cell a lot too. So main cells involved too is by main cells involved would be the B cells or B leukocyte, this type of cells. Especially with the B cell plasma cell. This is a very special type of B cells that release the antibodies, and what they target. Okay, target is very important. This is targeting the pathogens. the antibody targeting the pathogen to kill. So in your body fluid. Okay, for example, bacteria, virus before the entering the cells. So their key weapon is their antibodies. So what exactly antibody is? Antibody look like this kind of Y shape is how we describe the antibodies a lot of times too. What does it do? Antibody goes to the pathogens. It actually kind of pocket and they kill that pathogen itself too. This is the easiest way you can imagine about antibodies functions too. Antibody is also known to be our final weapon. So it's also very similar to like a nuclear bomb of the things too. That it can kill all the pathogen because it can swipe up all the pathogens by just spreading all those great concentration values too. So in terms of that, we need to think about something here. The helper T cells is how they involves too. Now, helper T cell, if you remember from the video again too, the dendritic cells goes into the lymph node too, and they kind of awaken the T cell first of all. That's known as helper T cells. The helper T cell has a role in this antibody-mediated immune systems that it activates the B cells to the excuse me to produce the antibodies. And they also they have a memory memory B cells as well too. Okay, so the key point to understand the point is antibody released by B cells, okay, kills the pathogen. It's the way you can think about it here. They release the pathogen, they kill the pathogens. They swipe up the pathogen with the help of the innate immune systems too. Okay, now cell-mediated is that not really directly targeting the pathogens. So it is also known as the cellular immunity. The cells involved for that is the T cells, not the B cells in case of this, especially in the case of that with a cytotoxic. Also cytotoxic, the T cells. The nickname of cytotoxic T cell is a killer cell. It kills not the pathogen though, it kills the infected cells. And this is also an infected cell, as in like a cancer cell can be killed by this kind of T cell as well too. Okay, so the key weapon is the cytotoxic, the T cell itself. The T cell is so powerful it can engulfing the infected cells too. So what does it do? The helper T cell is not really activating the B cell. It activates the T cytotoxic. The T cells itself too. So helper T cell has a lot of roles, including in both of the antibody-mediated and the cell-mediated immunity is given too. So in terms of that, they also have memory, the T cells, for the next invasions, the same type of invasions too. So key word for the adaptive, the cell-mediated cellular immunity. Release the T cell specifically like for targeting the infected cell using these cytotoxic T cells given. Okay, can you like summarize the point of that too? So this is innate, this is adaptive immune systems too. And what happens is if you have invasions, yes, first thing, innate immune systems get activated straight after. Okay, they release if the physical and chemical barrier is broken down, they release a lot of the phagocytes, neutrophils, and the macrophages and NK cells in the same times too. The inflammatory response gets reactivated. In the same time, these cells kind of get a help for those adaptive immune system. But as just said, this adaptive immune system takes sometimes days to get activated because it's hard to find the matching T cells or the B cell to the given antigens. So please remember the difference between antibody, antigen. Antigen is the one that activate the antibodies too, which is basically found inside the pathogens. Antibody is our final weapon fight against the pathogens. Okay, so antigen, as I said, the antibody generating factor, also known as some of the debris of the dead bodies of the the pathogen itself. That's what we learned last week in terms of summary of the innate and adaptive immune systems, and also compare and contrast of all that givens. Okay, and that's basically what I can give you, like from the flow chart. Adaptive immune systems all given to you. You can just copy them down in your notes as well too. Okay, any questions for the adaptive immune systems? Okay, now have a look at the page 25 of your workbook, please. There's one chapter that I did not finish last week. And this is related to this adaptive immune system. So page 125 of the workbook, please. Okay, this could be a little bit like extra syllabus points because some schools would not ever teach that, but as the examination nowadays getting more difficult, so it's good to know a little extensive lessons about the contents about how we are recognizing the antigens. So let's go back to some of the adaptive immune system there too. To remember, the helper T cell has a really important roles in all of those adaptive immune system immunities. Helper T cells activate the B cells as well as it activates the cytotoxic T cells too. So it is involved in both of the antibody and cell-mediated immunities. The question is, how the helper T cell then recognize that type of the antigens from the pathogens? Okay, I won't talk too much about the chemistry behind it here. There's no need to know about any chemistry, but it's good to know some key terms used in here. So page 125 gives you some ideas about how the helper T cells do that. So start with the macrophages too. You've probably ever seen that macrophage, the white blood cell, eats the infected cells. Okay, like engulfing, called a phagocyte. What happened from here is that after in the process of the phagocytes are digesting the infected cells, it's popping something known as antigen MHC2, the complex out. Now, MHC stands for, it's given on your workbook as well too. MHC, its full name is known as major histocompatibility, the complex. I know it sounds really complicated, but it simply means that it's a types of the receptor. Just the biological receptor itself too for antigen. So what does it do? There are cells from that. So do you remember the dendritic cells kind of helping that, holding those debris of that too? Basically, that's represented in here. MHC2, the type 2, the complex. Complex means that we have a bit of this is the antigen. Let's give it. Okay, which is basically from the infected cell. And what it does is, macrophages are moving around into your lymph nodes, goes to the lymph node, which is located every single part of your bodies too, finding for the help of the helper T cells. Yes, there is a helper T cells, receives the information about the antigens from that MHC2 complex to that. Okay, so there's a joint of that. And helper T lymphocyte prolife and the release of cytokinesin to activate cytotoxic T lymphocytes first of all. And then it goes to the infected cells and they basically cytotoxic T cell lymphocytes goes here. So what actually happened is this. Remember that there are two types of T cells. One is the helper, one is the cytotoxic. The way you can remember a cytotoxic is a killer cells. What does killer cell is this? This helper T lymphocyte kind of first of all recognize that there is a very specific antigens available, invaded your body. Then it releases a very specific and release a cytokinin to activate the cytotoxic T lymphocyte. And what they do is this: they take these antigens to the cytotoxic, goes to cytotoxic and T cells, and give it that to them to, hey, this is the dead body of that, or the cells, or infected cells. Find it and kill it. Does it make sense? So it can match that exact same type of the infected cell because they have a dead body, which is the antigen of the infected cell as well too. So what does it do? Cytotoxic T lymphocyte, which is cytotoxic T killer T cell, with the this very specific type of the bodies too, the receptor, kind of matching the infected cells, and it kills the infected cell as well too. Basically, this is how they do it, and there are two types of the MHC that you might need to know a little bit too. So I just give you some little summary of the MHC type. Oops. Okay, so you can copy this one down on your page 128. 128 in MHT, question 2 given. So MHC, just write it down please, the major histocompatibility complex is a type of receptor for the antigens. There are two types of the MHC, the MHC class 1. So MHC class 1 is basically it's found in all the nucleated cell. Okay, and it's important here. It present the antigens to the cytotoxic, the T cell. Okay, and then it involved in killing infected cells itself too. This is the MHC class 1, the receptor. The second type, the MHC, is class 2, MHC class 2 receptor. So where does it found? This is found in only on the antigen presenting cells should be cells. This is short term of the APCs, antigen presenting cells, like a macrophages. Okay, dendritic cells, and the B cells too. Okay, so what they do, they are present interact with the helper, the T cells itself too. And what does it do? It helps to activate and coordinate the immune response. So let's kind of summarize that. MH1 is for the infected cells. Okay, goes on to the cytotoxic, the T cells, goes in and it kills. Is how they're related. Whereas MHC2 is related to immune cells, and related to the helper T cell. Okay, and also just the help to activate. It's good to refer back into the diagram that we had. So MH2 is basically from this macrophages helping that these helper T cells. Okay, MH1 is represented here. This is MH1, MHC1 basically, from the infected cell which has a receptor of that given. Okay, could you see the difference between the two? This MHC is basically the parts of the B and T cells, specifically T cells, that recognize that they are what type of the antigens and how we actually activate your adaptive immune system itself too. Okay, you may or may not learn that in school, to be honest. It could be just leave that to a depth study. I know, Hayden, you didn't learn that in school at all, MHC. But still, this would be like part of the syllabus, we would say, because the syllabus is specifically saying that we need to know how the T cell can recognize the antigens too. Okay, some trial papers kind of using these ideas as well too. So let's kind of do some practice on these immunities. So worksheet 2. 1. Oh, not this one. 2 and 3. Okay, this worksheet has some information about just MHC processing the antigen, just what was something we talked about lab 2, adaptive immune responses, basically everything that we learned, colon selections too. So I give you about 20, 30, 25 minutes to go through these questions now, please. It's a good note, it's a good reference you can use as well too. Yeah. Let's try to finish up to the antibodies, or before the antibodies. Try to finish up the colonial selection, page 7. And we go through the answers first and then finish the rest of these questions then. Okay, page 1, 2, page 2, 170, phagocytes and the phagocytosis. Question 1, explain the role of the chemical makers and phagocyte receptors in enhancing phagocytosis. Jennifer, what is the role of the chemical markers?
They coat foreign material which mark as a target for phagocytosis.
Good. Coat foreign material and the target. Good. It's making us the target of the for the phagocytosis. Good. And these markers bind to the phagocytes, the receptors, triggers in the engulfment. So engulfment is like they are digesting whole through that too. So receptors, markers are given too. Question 2. What is the purpose of the phagocytosis and how is it involved in the internal defense? Hayden.
Phagocytosis is the primary method of destroying foreign material, phagocytes, and it's by engulfing cells.
The key term to describe the phagocytosis is engulfment, that is digesting in, and therefore the removal of the microbes. So does it affect the does it harm the organisms then? Does it kill the cells?
Like
your own cells?
Oh yes, it could.
It could, but basically it is not really killing your healthy cells. It is only targeting those with the pathogens, to be the infected cells. But cells like infected cells are more like a killed by the natural killer cells too. So it's very safe in terms of the protecting that, and also it's known as the it's a very safely, you would say safely destroy by enzyme.
Neutrophils,
Yep.
aren't they also in phagocytes?
Neutrophils are more likely to release the chemicals, so they do the phagocytosis too, but more likely phagocytosis happen with the macrophages or the dendritic cells a lot of times too. Okay. Okay, internal defense because they are targets of foreign materials and regardless of the whether they are not. Okay, so it is very rapid as we discussed about the innate immune systems, and also be early protection. For any of the infections they invaded. Question 3. Why do you think the foreign materials has to be indoors in the pathogens? Liana?
Digestive enzyme
Yep.
breaks it down.
Yep. So it contains the digestion enzymes too. So which means what happened? So it's the phagosome. So what is a phagosome? What is a phagosome? Have a look at step 3 here. Phagosomes are enclosing microbes in the membrane. So that is basically a phagosome given. So once the engulfing the macrophages engulfing the microbes, there's a phagosome form too, and the phagosome contains the digestion process. And those of you who remember from the digestion in year 11s too, whether it's chemical or physical digestion, it is basically decomposition of the microbes inside. So the enzymes do not digest. So the reason why we need a phagosome is they do not so the enzymes do not digest the phagocyte itself. Phagocyte is a cell, basically. You can think about phagocyte as a cell. Okay, phagocytosis is the process of the phagocytosis, like phagocytosisms too. Next page, processing the antigens. We kind of talked about the MHC before we started this worksheet. Question 1: what is the purpose of the antigen processing? Antigen processing prepares. So it is known as prepares and displays the antigens. Okay. Now for what? For the presentation. The presentation to the T cells. They bring up T cells of the immune systems, and basically T cell therefore would recognize, okay, and of the infection or the abnormal growth. Question 2: why do MHC receptors with no antigenic peptide bound not cause the immune response? MHC receptors, okay. The MHC receptors, okay, we talked about 2 types of MHC receptors, type class 1 and class 2, but whether that's a class 1 or class 2, they are with those no foreign antigen by themselves, they're receptors, the bound signals, okay, to the T cells. Whether that's a helper T cell or the cytotoxic T cells, okay, that the cell is healthy. So the cell, the cells they can be ignored. So let's talk about the differences between the class 1 and class 2. Okay, class 1 and class 2. Class 1 MHC or MHC class 1, as we discussed that too. It's also given on your workbook too, but okay. So class 1 is displaying the antigenic, the peptide, or simply an antigen itself, okay, from the pathogens. Okay, that have infected the cell. And remember that was basically what we discussed about in terms of how they do it. So MH1 infected cells to the cytotoxic, the T cell. That's the purpose of that too. It means that we have infected cell would have the receptor MHC1 with the antigens there. Okay, then killer, the cytotoxic, the T cell, recognize that from the MHC, from the infected cell itself too. Okay, that's a simple diagram that I can show you. In cytotoxic T cell, recognize that the presence of the antigen from the infected cells through the MHC class 1 receptor. Okay, MHC, the class 2, is displaying the opposite direction. It's kind of different too. It displays, so it's displaying the antigens from pathogens. Okay, that have been eaten by the phagocyte, okay, or the phagocytosis 2. In other words, from the white blood cells, and it's giving that to the helper, the T cell given to. The way you can understand it is this: we have the macrophage, which is phagocytosis, and once engulfing the infected cell, that, or even for like the pathogens, what they do, they're using the MHC, the type 2 receptor, displaying that antigen. Okay, and what this do, there are helper T cell comes along to recognize that there's an antigen present in the macrophage or the phagocytosis too. See the difference between the two? One is directly from the infected cells, one is indirectly from the macrophages too. So it is giving that to some help. Helper T cell can move along with your lymphatic node, your body systems to awaken, activates both the B and T cells too. Okay, so that's how we can understand about MHC class 1 and class 2, part of the processing the antigens. Okay, all right, next page. Lymphatic systems and the immunity is given to. The lymph node or lymphatic systems is something that's very important because it includes all the components. It's well described in this worksheet. So, tonsils, thymus, spleen, lymph nodes, red bone marrows, and also lymphatic vessels too. So, tonsils started from that. Has anyone experienced that when you are ill, infected? Have you ever seen the swelling on your tonsil area at the back of your mouth too? You can feel like how to swallow. You don't really feel like eating too because it's so hot. What happened is that they basically get activated, means that there are lots of the leukocytes, B and T cells are located over here. So they do recognize that those kind of antigens. So they are looking for around it to kind of activate it. The sign of activation is basically you feel the inflammation of the tonsil area, also known as tonsillitis. Okay, you'll probably have a thing the thymus, that too, the spleens, all related here. But the important thing is, what is the general role? Question 1 of the lymphatic system in the immunity. So let's answer that. Lymphatic system produces first of all, it produces the white blood cell involved in the protecting the body. So white blood cells including what? You can think about all the phagocytosis. Okay, all those cells. Sorry, phagocytes, I should say phagocytes, including the macrophages and neutrophils. Also the leukocyte. That includes the B and the T cells. So those are all produced through the your lymph node and also the bone marrows too. Okay, so your pathogen encounters, this is basically produce these. So those what? The factory of the white blood cells. Every part of here is a factory of that too. Question 2. What is the role of the lymph nodes in the immune response? Hayden, what's the role of the lymph nodes?
It needs to transport white blood cells such as dendritic cells.
Yeah. Anything else? They're the sites of, okay, write it down please, the lymphocyte activation. Yes, there's where those lymphocytes are accumulated to. But in terms of where the antigens are presented to the lymphocytes, all right, okay, and also known as the proliferation. Okay, so from here, the lymph node is like a headquarter. You can think about the small headquarter of those leukocytes kind of accumulated. So once the macrophages from after recognizing the antigens bring these to those lymph nodes, inside the lymph node they are recognized that what kind of antigens to, and then what they do is they release those leukocytes into your circular system. So the lymphocytes can enter the general circulation. And what happens to the infected site as a part of the innate immune system? Innate immune systems, part of the innate immune systems? Not too sure. Okay. Infected site would it be inflamed? Inflamed as in like there's a vasodilation, there's a lot of flows of those leukocytes going into that too. Because basically you can imagine here, once you get a cut or infected, they open the door, they open the valve so that they can just get all those leukocytes and those white blood cells into the site too. And your node is then actually not too far. Can you see like each of the those sites of those two lymph nodes? These are the lymph nodes, every site of there too. They're located in the all spread around your bodies too, from your neck, heart, your legs, all that part too. What they do is, so when you get a cut in here, it goes closest to the lymph nodes. As I said, this is basically working some sort of the headquarters. They're looking for the headquarters of that lymph node. Therefore, they can rapidly act into, but even that takes days too. B. What about, why do you think the lymph nodes become swollen when someone has the infection? Why do you think it gets swollen? Jennifer, why do you think lymph nodes get swollen? Like a tonsil area, there's a lymph as well too. Why do they get swollen?
Didn't you say vasodilation?
Vasodilation happened, but that's not the site of the infection, isn't it? Infection probably happens somewhere in your bodies too, but this area is not really for the swollen. Swollen side is the lymph. Think about the many swollen is there are lots of those, the leukocytes and also the lymphocytes available in case of this. So lymph node swollen because the large numbers of the lymphocytes are being produced. Okay, therefore they can to fight the infections here.
If I say they swell because there's large numbers and there's high levels of transportation, does that
Same thing, large numbers there. Simply lymph node is, as I said, it's all about their productions from the bone marrow to that too. By the way, the white blood cells, guys, they're all produced from your bone marrow, especially in your thigh, the femur, which is the thickest bones that you have a lot of times too. So inside of that kind of white blood, inside of the bone marrows, they produce that, transporting to the closest lymph nodes on the side of that, and therefore we can transport those kind of lymphocytes in the case you get sick. Okay. Okay, let's finish up to this page 6. This is all about the adaptive immune system as we talked about B and T cells. Basically what happened to stem cells to that. Have a read that through. It's really, really useful kind of the flow chart you can use as well too. Question 1. Where do B cells and T cells originate being maturing? They are coming from the bone marrow and also the fetal liver. The two sides. Question 1 for that. Next page is 1. The bone marrow and the fetal liver. Question 2. Where do B cells mature again? They are mature in the bone marrow. What about the T cells? T cells mainly are matured in the thymus gland. Where is the thymus located? Here. That's basically where the thymus is located, on the next side of that. 3. Describe the nature and the general actions that the two major divisions in the immune systems to humoral immune system and cell-mediated immune system. Humoral in terms of that antibody-mediated immune systems too. I kind of went through that, so it's a good summary of that too. Humoral or the antibody-mediated immunity is all about this production of antibodies. Okay, what does antibodies do? What do they do? What are they targeting? Are they targeting the pathogen or the cells? They're targeting the pathogens. I should say targeting the pathogen. I must say production of the antibodies by the B cell, B leukocyte. This is a summary of the basically known as active humoral immunity or the antibody-mediated immunities too. B, what about cell-mediated? It involves the T cells, so the cytotoxic, specifically cytotoxic T cells. What does it do? It destroys or it kills the infected, the cells. That's known as cell-mediated immune systems too. It doesn't mean like T cell only kills infected. They do kill some pathogens, but mainly they're targeting those infected cells. As they're activating as we discussed about MHC, the type 2, the receptor as well too. 4. Explain how an antigen causes the activation and the proliferation of the T cell and B cell, including the role of the dendritic cells. Basically, we talked about it in the previous chapter. By using the presence of the antigens, use the MHC type 1 and type 2. the helper T cells get activated. Now, what does the helper T cell do? They are activating both of the B and cytotoxic T cells. So it is activating both of those, cell-mediated as well as antibody-mediated too. Summarize that. It's good to know how the adaptive immune system get activated too. It's the type of the question you may get. 5. In what way do dendritic cells act as a messenger between the innate and adaptive immune system? Do you remember the videos you watched too? Dendritic cells, like these kind of dendritic cells, what they do, they're engulfing those pathogens, presenting the antigens on the side using the MHC type 1 receptor, and moving on to where the lymph node and presenting the antigens to the helper T cells. And story continues on from that again. So it's basically, we say dendritic cells act as messengers by processing the antigens and presenting them to the T cells so that specific antigens can be recognized and targeted. 6a. Describe the function of each of the following cells in the immune system response. T helper cells, I've been telling that it activates both T killer cells or cytotoxic T cells and the B cells too. Okay, 2. Yep.
I wrote active response, like activates.
Activates.
Is that wrong?
Activate what?
The active response.
No. What do you mean active response? Adaptive response, you mean? What do you mean by adaptive response? There are 2 types of adaptive responses too. Be specific in your answer. Your answer is not wrong, but not the right. So you must say it activates both T killer cell or cytotoxic T cells and the B plasma cells, which is kind of important role of the cell-mediated or antibody-mediated immunities. B, T killer cell, cytotoxic T cells, it is the one that destroys the target cell on contact by binding and the lysing cells itself. So as we know, like is known as killer cells. Okay, it's not so complicated if you understand like adaptive immune systems too. Guys, the one thing is that please separate this adaptive immune system to the innate immune systems. You need to study innate immune system as well as adaptive immune system both. But as we get infected, we get both get activated. Okay, so you need to know the relation between the two, the difference, and some like there's differences between the two. Especially like and talk a little more about adaptive immune systems. It's a good storytelling, so it is worth it to prepare like 6 to 8 marker questions saying describing the process of the innate and adaptive immune system in the case you have infections. That's okay. That's good to prepare. So a lot of things to write it down, but a lot of times the questions coming with combining with some data processing. So you will get lots of those graph, tables, bar graph, and the trend, the map as well too. It's something we're going to practice next week a lot and the week after as well too during the holiday. Okay, any questions up to here? The colonial selections and all that is basically related to what we've done. Okay, take some break. We're going to come back with the rest of the worksheets then.